The Volkswagen T-Roc has quietly been one of the most important cars in Europe for the better part of a decade. It was the model that turned Volkswagen's SUV ambitions into real volume, selling in numbers most rivals could only envy. So when Volkswagen builds an all-new version, it is not a small moment. This second-generation T-Roc has to carry a badge that millions of people already trust, and it has to do it in a market that has moved on a lot since the first one arrived. From the outside, the changes are easy to underrate at first glance, and then hard to ignore once you walk around it. The new T-Roc is longer than before, now stretching to a little over 14 feet 4 inches, and that extra length gives it a more planted, more grown-up stance. The fusher lines of the old car are gone. In their place is a cleaner surface, a full-width light bar across the nose, and a rear that finally looks like it belongs to the same family as Volkswagen's larger SUVs. It is not shouting for attention. It is just more confident, and on the show floor that quiet confidence reads as a car that has matured rather than reinvented itself. Inside is where the second generation feels like the bigger step. The old T-Roc was often criticized for hard, scratchy plastics in a cabin that cost premium money, and Volkswagen clearly heard that. The materials around the dashboard and doors feel softer and more considered now. The screens are larger and sharper, and the whole layout looks like it came from a more expensive car. There is more usable space too, particularly in the back, where passengers who felt pinched in the old model now have proper room to stretch out. That improvement in quality matters more than any single spec, because the interior is where you actually live with a car like this every day. If walkarounds like this one help you work out which cars are worth your time, subscribe so you catch the next one. The boot continues that theme of quiet practicality. It now holds 475 liters, which works out to just under 17 cubic feet, an increase of 30 liters over the old car. That is a genuinely useful gain in a segment where families often choose on boot space alone. Under the hood is where the story gets more complicated and more honest. At launch, the T-Roc is offered only with a single 1.5-liter mild hybrid petrol engine in either 115 or 148 horsepower form, driving the front wheels through a 7-speed automatic. There is no all-wheel drive at launch, and Volkswagen has confirmed there are no plans for a plug-in hybrid. For some buyers, particularly company car drivers who lean on plug-in efficiency, that is a real gap. But it is worth knowing what is coming. A full hybrid with up to 168 horsepower arrives in the middle of the year, a 200 horsepower 2-liter with all-wheel drive is on the way, and a hotter T-Roc R has already been confirmed. So the thin launch lineup is the start of the range, not the whole of it. On the move, neither of the launch engines is quick, and the T-Roc does not pretend to be a performance car. The 148 horsepower version has enough in reserve for everyday driving, and the mild hybrid system smooths out the low-speed shuffle that matters most in town. This is a car tuned for ease rather than excitement, and for the buyer it is aimed at, that is the right call. Pricing is where Volkswagen is asking for some faith. The new T-Roc starts from around £31,600, which is close to $40,000, and that is not a cheap entry point for a compact SUV. Rivals like the Nissan Qashqai, the Kia Sportage, and the Toyota CHR all make a strong value case, and newer Chinese options undercut it further. What Volkswagen is selling here is the badge, the improved cabin, and the promise of a broader range to come. Taken as a whole, the second-generation T-Roc is a more grown-up, more polished version of a car that was already selling well. It does not reinvent the formula. It refines it, fixes the cabin complaints that dogged the old one, and sets up a range that will get a lot more interesting over the next year. For a car this important to Volkswagen, playing it smart rather than playing it safe might be exactly